Geek Show, Brian. Regularity, although we're off by a day because Brian needed some morning. We have to discuss how the Nuggets are a contender. I'm Dre Alvarez, is found most places as Nerd Numbers. With me, as always, is my producer, voice of God, man of many hats, Brian Foster. Brian, outside of the loss to the Nuggets, how you feeling?
I mean, you can't win them all, right? The Warriors look great. It's still hilarious to me, and I've said this a million times. What was the rest of the league thinking when they didn't try to trade for Jimmy Butler? Like this guy, man, I think like he's easily a top 10 player in the league every year. Some years top 5 and MVP contending, and no one wanted him. And all of a sudden, the Warriors' defense is just massively improved. The offense is better as well. They look great.
Yeah, and I mean, it's funny because as an example, the Denver Nuggets very recently did two things. They beat the Lakers, which I was happy about, and then if we examine the Lakers were without Luka Doncic and without LeBron James. We're gonna have to see, Brian. So LeBron James did recently have an injury. So, year after year, we've been kind of having this comment about like, is this the year he finally kind of gives out? And I mean, it's ridiculous to be able to say that after what's the word I'm looking for? Like he was in the All-Star game, but he sat at the last second. But LeBron James has been out the last four games, and the Lakers are 2-2 in those games. And it's it was a 5 point loss to the Denver Nuggets. They probably weren't beating Milwaukee, but they probably stood a chance against the Nuggets. And the Lakers are looking really good because if, what we were kind of talking is we're going to talk the season, how things are shaping up. And we are, 12 games out of the playoffs roughly. The reason I bring that up is if you look at the Oklahoma City Thunder, they are 56 and 12, as are the Cleveland Cavaliers. Let me check. There are some games going on right now. Yeah, OKC's in no hope of losing, and Cleveland is playing Sacramento. We'll see. The reason I bring that up, Brian, is there are still rather two 70 win seasons in sight. Long shot, I would bet, but very possible for OKC and Cleveland. So that, we are just kind of coming down to the wire here and things are starting to look more stable. I mean, even out west at this point, if this was a normal year with playoff seeding, we'd be set. It's basically OKC down to the Clippers. No one else is really in it. Out east, man, we're getting back to the days of old where 1 through 6, pretty stable. Seven on, we have at the moment four teams with a losing record, which means with how the play-in works, guaranteed two teams with a losing record are going to make the NBA playoffs out east. So we're coming down to it, and I thought, it's definitely going to be fun to see what we think. And I mean, the boring, boring answer, Brian, is this is OKC's to lose. If Oklahoma does not win a title this year, it will be, you know, I'm fine saying it as an analytics nerd. It'll be worse than the 73 win
Ooh.
Warriors not taking it home. Because if we look at the Oklahoma City Thunder right now, they have an SRS of 12.5, um, which means on average they would beat an average team on a neutral court by 12 and a half points, which is ridiculous. And by the way, Brian, figured I think I kind of did the rundown, but if not, we'll be talking kind of state of the NBA, our kind of like where we think awards sit, some players getting shut down for the season, and a little bowling, and then anything else that strikes our fancy. Anyway, so Brian, how you
Yes.
feeling about Golden State's chances? I mean, they're six right now, but it is super duper clustered.
Yeah, I mean, so you were just talking about Oklahoma City having that gaudy, 12.5 SRS, which is also 12.5 net rating, by the way. So they have average schedule difficulty. Well, okay, I'll answer your question about the Warriors. The Warriors are in this second cluster of teams, right? There are all these teams that have very similar records in the West and even a couple in the East, I think, like the Pistons and Bucks. And these teams are all, like you were saying, in the lead up segment, they have all these injury questions, right? It's late in the season. So the Warriors are positioned right now where they're relatively healthy, right? They're winning a ton of games because of that health, and also their schedule has gotten easier. So if they can stay as a sixth seed, get up to the fourth or fifth seed, maybe if things go really well, they could make a run. We talked about this before, right? There's the old. Do you remember who wrote this article, Dre? I want to say it was Arturo or maybe Ari Caroline about what the resume of a championship team looks like, right? You need to get to 50 wins, or maybe it was like 51 or 52. You have to get to a certain point heading into the playoffs where you meet that threshold to challenge to a championship team. The Warriors, like, so if they do have what did you say, 14 games left roughly, I think, yeah, that looks right for a lot of these teams. They're gonna have to go like 10-4, and really show their mettle. I think, to me, to put themselves up into that championship contention. And real fast on the Thunder, speaking of Arturo, I guess I'll make his point initially, which is that he will say, well, teams with young players will have the refs discriminate against them in the playoffs, so you might lose a point or two here and there. Not the most important point, though. I think the bigger one is, yes, they have this tremendous body of work, the net rating, the SRS, but there is not another team that's really standing up to them in the West right now. Maybe it's the Warriors. I mean, maybe it's the Lakers if they get healthy, or the Rockets or Grizzlies. But my real point is the Cavaliers and the Celtics in the East have to go through each other. And to me, that's makes Oklahoma City's route so much easier just because they're alone in the West in terms of elite teams.
Yeah, and I mean, what was ridiculous, and we called this, we've gotten so much right this season, Brian, that I just absolutely love, is we looked at the Thunder right near the trade deadline, and they were ridiculous. By the way, the reason I say they'd be the greatest upset is they are thus far, with 12 games to go, the only team in NBA history with a plus 12 SRS. I and it we talked a lot of advanced analytics on last show, and that is one of the really hard parts about advanced analytics, or analytics in general, is it is so hard to wrap your mind around what a difference half a point is in point margin, and what half a point in point margin means in top teams. Because yeah, if we're looking all time, first off, we have to go all the way back to 1971. That's the Milwaukee Bucks, and they did win a title. This was Oscar Robertson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, two of the all-time greats. They have an SRS of 11.9. That's the last time a team got close to plus 12. There are three teams in NBA history that beat 11.5. That's Chicago in 1996, the first 70-win team in NBA history, 72 wins. First in defense, first in offense in the NBA. That's Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, the greatest offensive player of all time, and Michael Jordan, the greatest defensive player of all time, and Dennis Rodman on a team together, with Scottie Pippen to round things out. Tony Kukoc shooting from distance. Steve Kerr there as well. One of the most stacked teams. The 1972 Lakers, I want to say, I think they had like a win streak that was just utterly ridiculous. And then actually rounding out top five. So here's what's nice. If OKC can win this, um, we get back to kind of equilibrium the last 2 years. If OKC wins this year, and last year actually because Boston won last year, then every team that's been better than 11 SRS in NBA history will have won a title. OKC is currently the only team, only, ever, 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 ever. I cannot wrap my head around how absurd that is. Team above 12. And by the way, they're padding their lead right now. They're playing the Philadelphia 76ers right now, and they're up by like 30. And for what it's worth, this is kind of what I was saying about why it's like theirs to lose. This is with a bunch of players resting. So OKC is resting Shea Gilgeous-Alexander and Isaiah Hartenstein, right? The real MVP, and are like sleeper. And something we had said was like, if Chet comes back and is legit, because Chet, no shot of Rookie of the Year last season with Victor Wembanyama, and I think had some injury. Chet came back and is looking really, really good. And that's what we said. We're like, at the trade deadline, when we were noticing how ridiculous this team was, we kind of noted that they couldn't be in the Jimmy Butler sweepstakes because the only trade asset they had that could have made salaries work for Jimmy Butler was Isaiah Hartenstein. And Chet was injured, so they needed Isaiah to stick around. Chet's back, and they've even like
They have
this
two
made me
towered
sad.
it.
Brian, Chet got back. OKC two towered it, and they took down my Denver Nuggets.
Yep.
And I kind of said to you, I was like, I'm happy they did the strategy we liked. Did it have to be against my team? But then the Nuggets won the next one, so it's fine. It's fine.
Yep.
It's fine. But just OKC, right? They're sitting two of their starters, and admittedly, it's a team that at this point doesn't want to win. Tyrese Maxey is sitting. I don't know if that's intentional or not. I think how long has Joel Embiid? Joel Embiid's been out for a bit now at this point. And you
Yeah.
mentioned that Paul George is like done for the season at this
Officially,
point.
yeah. I think they shut Embiid down last week, maybe, but it wasn't that long ago.
Well, Joel Embiid has been out since the 22nd,
Yeah.
but he's been down for a while.
Yep.
And I, funny story, Brian, I was in California this week and we walked by someone that had a Philadelphia 76ers hoodie on their dog. Very cute. And I was just like, hey, sorry, I hate to tell you this, man. I am mortal enemies with the 76ers forever because in 1976, the last year in the ABA, they beat the Denver Nuggets, our best shot at a title at that point. It took us 40 years to get back. And then, of course, Joel Embiid took the MVP from Nikola Jokic. So, forever on my shit list. But I had kind of said I didn't think Joel Embiid was ever going to sniff 2,000 minutes again in his NBA career. And he managed to do it one more time, right? He played really strong in that season against Nikola Jokic. Won an MVP, brought back this concept of him and Nikola Jokic being two high usage big men. I love having this back in the NBA, but now we're seeing where, injuries are catching up. So yeah, the Philadelphia 76ers are shutting things down clearly. And unshockingly, Oklahoma, their second unit is able to dismantle a team that has no incentive to win anymore. But that's also padding that lead, which means it will be really hard for them not to finish the season above 12 SRS, which, as I mentioned, best player in the NBA right now, and that's going to be hard to lose as well. Because if we look at Boxscore Geeks, what is Shea up to at this point? He's like 18 wins, and I think Jokic is at a okay. It's only 1.4 wins. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, as of the date we're recording this, March 19th, and this isn't going to change because he's not playing tonight. He's at 18.2 wins produced. Nikola Jokic is at 16.8. Nikola Jokic could make up a little ground tonight against the Lakers if he plays. He sat the last game, but
He's
like,
not playing.
so he's not playing tonight. So there's no change. So basically, Shea is going to pad his is going to keep his lead. Best player in the NBA, highest SRS ever. To not win an NBA title with that on your resume would be just egregious. And at this point, we are back to the top five teams all time having won one because for what it's worth, the 1972 Bucks, the next year's for the Bucks, did not win an NBA title. The reason being the 1972 Lakers were better.
Yeah, I think the word on the Oklahoma City is we have this we have this thing in the NBA where we have okay, this is a bigger old conversation about NBA analysis, right? Who have the big voices in NBA analysis versus the small ones. And you can find, randos like me saying all kinds of different stuff. But the big voices, right? The former players working in the studio shows, that they are basically saying is we don't think Oklahoma City is good because they've never won a title before. And Shea, their superstar, despite being an MVP level player, has never personally won a championship. Therefore, we don't respect them. It's always been the mindset. And to me, it's like, well, okay, if that's your axiom, fine. But I think your argument about their compelling body of work is much more interesting to me.
Well, I mean, what gets interesting is Arturo kind of like what a championship looks like, what a title contender looks like. I do love that type of analysis. It's fun. My favorite analysis on that, though, is EJ Fisher, one
Mm.
of the best Spurs fans. And when we were talking about two towering it with Tim Duncan and David Robinson, his observation is he said, strategies never work until they do. the Golden State Warriors, right? You're not going to win with small ball, or you're not going to win with outside shooting until you do. You're not, you can't win with a shoot first. You can't win running your offense through a shooting guard like the Bulls did until you do. Um, it's one of those where it doesn't happen until it does. But there are compelling arguments to kind of some of the stuff Arturo has said. I want to say Ian Levy back in the day over at Hickory High made this observation that there was a bias in terms of free throws, how favorable the refs were to veterans versus younger players. And what I could also see for that, by the way, is savviness, experience being there. Brian, it wouldn't be a box score geek show if I didn't bring up chess periodically. And I've heard lots of chess players bring this up about top level chess, about like playing at the title level. And you see players, Magnus Carlsen was shaky, one of the greatest chess players of all time. In his first candidates run, that's the tournament to get to the world championship, he like blundered the last game and he had to actually get lucky. And one of his opponents had to lose as well for him to actually go on to the title match. And like the first match, he like showed up late and like
Do you remember his
was very
age then, by the way?
he was super young and
That's
he
yeah.
he was like 19. He was until recently. Gukesh, I think, is the most recent, but
Right.
Magnus Carlsen is one of the youngest title like world champions of all time. And he's even said that though, is he's basically going in classical chess, a loss is so monumentous that in a key match, like being able to steady your nerves and come away with the draw, because he talked about that in his first
Because the
world.
draw is a par, not, right? Not a win or a loss.
Yeah, draw, yeah, is 0 points, but that's the thing is if you come away with a loss is so bad. But just that exact thing, right? Being able to steady your nerves. So I could buy that. I could buy some degree of younger players are less established. So the referees don't give them the veteran calls. That's a thing we've known about. They might also not be as savvy. So instead of selling contact, as much as we hate players like Manu Ginobili and James Harden, notorious floppers, there is an art to knowing how to get calls and players that don't know how to do it. That was one of the alleged complaints about Luka Doncic, right? Is that, he just complains too much. Made a championship game last year, right? That, there is a world where the Mavericks had a chance at a title last year. One of the things they ran into, though, was the Boston Celtics were one of the greatest teams of all time by SRS, just like Oklahoma City this year. And it's worth noting, Boston, right, choked it away against Golden State. Boston hadn't won in a bit. So all of these narratives of like they can't win because yada yada yada. I mean, I will give you last year, and I want to briefly look at that series, just to see what happened, right, when they did lose to the Mavericks, kind of shockingly. But they came out strong in like game one, lost, you know, lost a big game two, lost a close game. It was a close series, and they lost game six by one. And so and that was this is going to be mean. In my opinion, that was more Luka Doncic going off than the Thunder blowing it, right? Doncic just played absurdly. And I'm trying to remember the player, but there was like one bad Thunder player last year. I don't have the numbers easily in front of me at the moment. I'm just kind of looking at them. But this year they've shored that all up. Like the Thunder are just stacked top to bottom. I don't see any weaknesses on that
I
squad.
love this point. So what you're saying is there's also bias just because they were a great team last year and lost in the playoffs. So they kind of, even though it's a sample size of one, they get that bad reputation. And then it's so easy, again, when you're just someone spouting off on the air like we are, to have that connective tissue happen. Yeah, that's very straightforward. I just think that like Shea is old enough and experienced enough, even in the playoffs now, that this rings hollow to me. And also, this is something that happens on the margins, right? A few extra free throws here and there, and what you're talking about is that 12 SRS, like that's historic. So we'll see what
But
happens.
yeah, there are two parts of that. So like first, a player that this smacks a lot of to me is Tracy McGrady.
Mm.
Because Tracy McGrady, by the end of his career, was notorious for like choking in the playoffs, right? One of the meanest was I think he was up 3-1 in a series with Orlando and was like, it's so good to finally get out of the first round. And then I think that was with Doc Rivers, because Doc Rivers is one of the worst playoff coaches ever. They lost the 3-1 lead. And so Tracy McGrady like never won. For fun, I did this once and I still need to go back to it. I looked over so many of Tracy McGrady's series that, were first round, getting shut down in the first round. And there were so many times that he put up just ridiculous games and his team lost. Charles Barkley, I think, was very similar. Charles Barkley, loses to Michael Jordan in the finals. Ridiculous run. And as mentioned, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander last year, I mean, in that loss, right? Shea puts up, I just read this stat line to you. 32.2 points, 8 rebounds, 7.3 assists, 1.2 steals, 2.3 blocks out of a point guard. Sure, Shea. 60% true shooting, and only 7% turnover percent. So it's just like he played great. The other guy just played greater. We'll go with that, right, Brian? Greater. Luca just played greater. And in fact, actually, I don't know if I believe this. I'll have to check my numbers when I have the chance. I don't have them in front of me. According to game score, Shea was better than Luca. I think our box score geeks numbers say that Luca was better than Shea. So it's like, yeah, I don't see a reason why not. And the follow up is that historic 12. This was the argument to the Warriors back in the day when they traded for Kevin Durant is because playoff series can be such a margin game, you want as much padding as you can get. And that's the thing is if we look at the NBA this year, let's do this really quick. So who is we got 12, 12.5 SRS out west, no one's touching them. I will argue there is some fakeness in a lot of these other teams, but the closest team at the moment is the Memphis Grizzlies with 5.6 SRS. So the Oklahoma City Thunder are on paper almost twice as good as the second best team on paper. There's lots of confounding factors to this, namely, come playoff time, these teams are going to play shortened rotations. They're going to play their stars more minutes. Certain teams, such as the Los Angeles Lakers, the Golden State Warriors, are different teams than they were before the trade deadline. So, with that being said, the Thunder, they'll have a big, big lead out west. And then to your point out east, Cleveland Cavaliers, very close, 9.76. That is still a big margin between them and Oklahoma. So it's like you want that 3 points, by the way, like a margin of three is a star player. So Oklahoma wants the margin of a star player against Cleveland should they face each other. And then I think, as we kind of noted, there's a very real chance that out west you have all these clump teams that are very good. And if they beat each other up on their way to fight OKC in the last round, what happened in the finals with Dallas last year could happen again. Dallas, admirable job to get to the NBA finals. And something that was driving me insane at the trade deadline is Luka Doncic was clearly injured in the NBA finals. He like tweaked his back. And the giveaway to that was Luka Doncic's free throw shooting just like vanished. And that kind of tells you there was something going on, right? Because his shooting form standing still at the line went away, which meant he was going through injuries. And I think I did read talks on like him having like cortisone shots, etc. So but the exact same thing could happen this year, which could be the Golden State Warriors. If they can't get a top four seed, they fight an uphill battle. They get to the Oklahoma City Thunder. They're dinged up by the time they get there. Oklahoma City easily dispatches them. Whereas out east, if Cleveland and Boston play each other in the last round and it goes to 6 or 7, they're a little worn out. Then Oklahoma can be rested for the finals with home court advantage if they can hold on to it. That's the fun thing. Who's going to get home court? Because this is right neck and neck. OKC and Cleveland both at 56. This is really good though, because it means both teams are not going to let off the gas. Because this is so silly. Tell me if I'm wrong, Brian. Both teams are going to be thinking about home court come the finals, and that's good because we've seen years where my Denver Nuggets, the year they won it all, part of the reason they only had 53 wins is they were so in front of second place, there was no incentive for them to keep playing
I
hard,
have to
and so they
confess
only.
my ignorance. I didn't realize that home court in the finals is decided by regular season record these days. I remember there was times where like the All-Star game decided it and stuff like that, but they actually I'm not saying you're wrong. I just didn't know.
I hope the NBA is the only pure one left, right? Because I thought that was the case, right? I thought it was record, but I do
No,
know
if
like
it was
baseball.
that way recently, I'm sure it still is.
Finished, yeah, regular season record is good, but yeah,
The
I
way it ought to
understand the
be.
confusion. Yeah, because in baseball it's like the winner of the All-Star game. In football, it's neutral, which can mean anything territory. But
Yeah,
that
it's
is
just whatever team is the most popular brings all their fans.
yeah. All right, so Brian, here's some fun stuff. This is what I wanted to do for fun because we're getting close to the end of the regular season. And since we only go bi-weekly, I don't think much has changed. Let's talk award races. I am hyper conflicted here on the first one. Let's just start with dessert. MVP. So, on paper, box score geeks, for doing our due diligence, it's not really close between Shea and Jokic. I mean, it's within the realm of arguing, but Shea is going to put up over 20 wins by the end of the season. In modern era, that is ridiculous. But Brian, but at the moment, Nikola Jokic is averaging a triple double. He is tied for his all-time triple doubles in a season with 29. If he can get one more triple double this season, he will be the first big man since Wilt Chamberlain to get over 30 triple doubles in the season. He is the first big man ever, first center ever in NBA history with a 30 point, 20 rebound, 20 assist game in NBA history. Admittedly, it took overtime, but other bigs have had overtime. So, and Nikola Jokic just doing the totals. Let's see how many does he have to give. He has 17 assists to give. Namely, he can score he can score minus 17 in his remaining games, whichever those are, because he has been sitting some for health. And still average a triple double for the season. So if Nikola Jokic is the first big to average a triple double ever, first player to average a triple double since Russell Westbrook, it's going to be hard to say he doesn't deserve MVP. Flip side, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander by the numbers, right? By the advanced numbers is just utterly crushing, and he is leading the NBA in 33 points per game on a team over, could finish Brian with 70 wins. So, who you going for?
I mean, for me personally, it's Shea, but I think the conversation of who's going to win, who the voters will go for, is more interesting. I guess my opinion is interesting too. Whatever. I mean, I just think for Shea, all right, I'll make my case real fast. First of all, because he's a point guard instead of a center, um, to me, that's a big disadvantage for him. I understand we have position adjustment and all that, but yeah, Jokic has a lot of advantages because of his size, I think, over him. I know that means grading on a curve, sort of, but that's kind of what I'm getting at. MVP, we can do that a little bit. Also, just the records. They're the number one team. I think that the MVP should be normally on one of the best teams.
And
And Jokic is on a really good team, but not a historic team like with Gilgis Alexander. But to the point of who's actually gonna win, yeah, leader in points per game versus triple double average. That's a tough one. I don't know who the voters will go for on that.
here's the annoying. Okay, actually, I was wrong, Brian. So here's the fun, stupid, easy answer, and I'm baffled by what happened here. So if you look at Nikola Jokic's resume with the Denver Nuggets, this is criminal but true. He has never had an all-star teammate,
Mm.
as in a player that has played on the all-star on the Nuggets. DeAndre Jordan is an all-star in the past. I forget the player. This was very similar to Michael Jordan. The comparables between Michael Jordan and Nikola Jokic's first finals, really, really similar. Same age, very similar pedigree in terms of MVPs, similar accolades. What people don't realize is the Chicago Bulls. Scottie Pippen wasn't Scottie Pippen until 1991. So Scottie Pippen was like a good player in 1991, took off. Here's a mean comment. There is no world, Brian, where I think Isaiah Thomas belonged on the dream team. I appreciate the ad campaigns he's going for. I appreciate Larry Bird gives you the argument that Isaiah Thomas could belong on the dream team. For those that don't know, in the 90s, if you're super young, in the 1990s, the we United States put up our first pro team into the Olympics, and it was a collection of some of the greatest talent we have ever seen. One of the players that was on the team was Larry Bird, who really, at that point, even by his own volition, did not belong on the team. But Magic Johnson basically said, "Come on, I'm going to be there. You got to be there." So Magic Johnson was on the team. Isaiah Thomas was a finals MVP point guard that at his best finished fifth in MVP voting. I know that stat because the second Isaiah Thomas with the Boston Celtics also finished fifth in MVP voting. So both Isaiah Thomas's in NBA history finished the same. Their peak MVP voting was the same. But Isaiah Thomas has in past made the argument he belonged on the team by accolades. If you were kind of saying some of the players on the team, like Larry Bird, were there just because of name recognition, I'll never give him that argument.
We should also say Christian Laettner as a college player was on that team, Dre. So they were going for random players to some extent.
Should have been Shaq, but also
Yeah.
what they did is that was Leitner has one of the most famous shots of all time, and Duke won a title. So it was basically like the winning title squad got one player to represent them in the Olympics that year.
I
Is
still think
essentially
it's the best team of all time, though. The best
that
basketball
Duke.
team ever made. No, no, the Dream Team. Just
Oh, not even close,
overall
right?
talent. Even though some of those guys were older, most of them were in their prime, and they were incredible. Like,
That was David Robinson and Michael Jordan in their prime. Karl Malone, John Stockton, to your point, in their prime. Chris Mullin, actually, I think that was one of his best seasons right before it.
yeah,
As mentioned, that's right when Scottie Pippen took off. So I'm going to agree with you. Magic Johnson, he leaves with HIV/AIDS complications the year before, but he comes back as a power
yeah.
forward and is good. So I'd agree with you. But okay, but anyway, so Brian, the
By the
point
way,
being,
Magic Johnson won the NBA Finals and played really well as a rookie. So Shea is
it
a
can
little bit
happen.
older than a rookie.
Yeah, well, but here's the argument, by the way, Brian. Nikola Jokic has never had an all-star player on the squad with
I
him. Now,
agree. Like that's very compelling. He has less help by far than Shea.
I argue that Aaron Gordon is criminally underrated and Jamal Murray just can't stay healthy. The reality
Yep.
is, if Jamal Murray could be healthy for 60 games in the regular season, we're very all over the place with Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray is a 20 points per game player, has had some of the most ridiculous playoff series ever. His average body of work puts him as about an average player, but points wins in the NBA. So Jamal Murray would have made an all-star game with Jokic, but he can't stay healthy. Aaron Gordon should have made an all-star game with Nikola Jokic, but the voters are the worst. The voters are the absolute worst. This year, though, Brian, Jalen Williams, who is scoring 31.4 points per 48 minutes, did make the All-Star game. So, Brian, I'm using the Jalen Williams argument. Namely, Jokic deserves the MVP because Jokic, zero teammates on the All-Star team. Shea Gilgeous did get one. Shea
It's
Gilgeous
a good
got one.
argument. I would argue in real terms, Williams and Gordon are having similarly good years. Maybe Williams a little better. Gordon's been dinged up a little bit, but I think after that, if you go deeper down the rosters, that's where OKC looks a lot better, and a lot of because of what you said, right? Guys are dinged up. Michael Porter, I think, is healthy now, but hasn't been. Christian Brown, same thing. And
I'm
then
loving Chris Brown.
yeah,
Like he is
he's
so
great.
good.
He's just a
Jamal,
modern player, right, Dre? He just like we have Moses Moody on the Warriors, is who he reminds me of, but except more athletic. Just tough guy who defends, man. I love that.
and he said he wanted to shoot more threes. He's shooting great from three. I love it. The one thing that makes me nervous about the Denver Nuggets come playoff time is if Julian Strother is going to get play, but based on the
Mm.
rotation, I don't think he is. I was just looking at that. So basically, I think the answer is Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. I also think he deserves it. Like, if this makes any sense, he had a really good case last year. If we're being honest, has a good case this year. I want Jokic to win it because I want him to get up to what, four, right? He should have had three in a row, but to get up to four would be good. Um, so I'm biased for sure, but I'm not going to lose any sleep over Shea getting it. I think it's a two-horse race. I don't think a single player out of those two gets a first place vote. Our number three pick would be Josh Hart. No one, no one is giving Josh Hart a vote. I guarantee that, but we love you, Josh Hart. And outside of that, it really doesn't matter. All right, Brian, this one boring and much more straightforward. Rookie of the year, it's a two-horse race according to the box score geeks. We got Zach Edey and is this Game of Thrones guy Donovan Clegane?
Klingon.
Klingon. I want to
Klingon.
say Clegane, right? It looks like that.
Yeah, he played at University of Connecticut and won a national championship there.
Can't be mad at that. And I think he was drafted pretty highly, and I'm trying to
He
remember. He's
was.
seventh overall pick, and I think he is on the box of NBA hoops. So, there could be something there. Um, yeah, it's hard to say one way or the other. Although here's the funny thing, I don't think he has a hope based on, so we have him up high on our thing, but per minute he's only getting 6.1 points per game. So this is a really weird season. I'm trying to look. Maybe I'm just trying to look by like conventional numbers. This is a really weird weak year for rookies. I think Edie might have it. Alex Sarr. These aren't good players. I'm just looking at points per game. Alan Sarr, Dalton Connect, Zachary Risha. I'm gonna look out how
Risa
to say
Shea.
Risa Shea. Glad you know. Quentin Post,
Yeah,
Stephen
couldn't post.
Castle. That's a good name.
He's Dutch, Dre. He grew up in Amsterdam.
Love it. Absolutely love it. I just gotta say, like, Edie's the only one I would vote for, and I don't really care about anybody else.
Yeah, Edey'll probably win it just because Memphis has been a good team, and he's just the starter on Memphis. But Jalen Wells for Memphis has also gotten a lot of hype, and of course, we can see his wins produced numbers aren't as good, but conventional wisdom likes Jalen Wells a lot for some reason. He went to Sonoma State, where my dad went to school, so shout out to him for that. But I would go with Edey as well, being the starter on a playoff team. Connect might have some juice just because he's on the Lakers, and they have not had a lot of depth either, so he's played a lot of minutes. But yeah, I mean, I'd think it's going to be Edey probably.
Well, here's the annoying thing. I am looking it up. And by the way, Brian, Tale as old as time. Last show was all about how everything's a repeat. Stefan Castle is the current odds-on favorite, and the reason this
Ah,
isn't hard. If you take a look at it, if you go to Boxscore Geeks and sort, I don't know what that was, Brian. If you sort by points per game, rookie, and then Patrick does have a minutes filter, so 390, you will notice that at the top of the points per 48, Stephen Castle leads all the rookies at 25.8. And at minutes, he is the fourth highest minutes played. So points make the world go round. And this is just painful because I'm like reading a USA Today article predicting rookie of the year. He is 13.7 points per game, 42.7 field goal, 28 point. And you're like, okay, maybe he's an outside shooter. Nope,
no.
28.1 from three, 71.9 from free throw. Like
Unbelievable.
it's a guy that's getting volume shooting on a bad team
No,
because
here's my
they're
theory. Everyone had already penciled in we're sending it to a rookie on the Spurs. And we're like, we got to change to a different rookie on the Spurs. So we're sticking with the Spurs and that's it.
yeah, they don't want to have to change. So that's depressing. But again, so
I will
box
say,
score.
watch for Quentin Post though. I'm joking a little about him, and his total numbers aren't good. He is a rookie, but he's actually really good. He's like a 42% free 3-point shooter or something like that, or over 40, which is amazing. And he's mostly kind of average and everything else. He's not bad. He's fine on defense. He just fouls a lot though because he's a rookie. Like if he gets those fouls down, I think he can actually be a real player at some point. His 2-point shooting is not great either, but he's gonna be a 3-point specialist. He already is.
Well, the other problem he's got going for him, not in a bad way, is shooting. He is a good. You're not wrong. He's a good shooter, right? Like he's good. 40% from three is a big, fantastic. Is putting up close to average. A little below average on big rebound numbers, but that's not the worst thing in the world. But he's on the 70, not 76ers. He is on the Golden State Warriors. He's not going to shoot. And this is what I noted about like Bradley Beal to the Phoenix Suns. It's going, if you have a player and you look at their production and all of their production comes from something that team doesn't need, it's going to be rough for the player. So it's kind of what you're saying. If you're looking at a rookie and you're kind of going, do I think they'll become good? The things Patrick always likes looking for is fouls and turnovers. His turnovers, pretty good actually. His fouls, though, his fouls are, as you mentioned, high, and that's going to limit how much he can stay in the game, right? Because if he's going to average a foul out per game, that's going to be rough. And he can't shoot as much. He's shooting more than an average big, but you would love to see him shooting 24 shots per 48. He is currently at 19.5, but that's in part because of the team he's on. So, and again, your coach, I want to say I was a big fan of this, basically said, we don't want rookies to play. We're not counting on a rookie to
Yep.
come in. So Quentin Post has played a grand total of 500 minutes. And by the way, that's going to do it too. Inconsistency. That's always one thing when I see a player change teams and I notice like a production gap. One of the most obvious things to look at is did they go from being a rotation level player to suddenly being all over the place? And watch, if we look at Quentin Post, he has like 3 games where he plays over 20 minutes, 4 games where he plays over 19 minutes. Then against Denver in the loss, only plays 8. Then yesterday in the win against Milwaukee, plays 23. And to your point, like you're calling it high, 14 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, not, pretty reasonable game that game. And actually, here's what I want to look at just for that, because I'm really curious to the point on the rebound. Yeah, I mean here's the thing, Brian, that I love. And by the way, for what it's worth, the box score geeks and wins produced will credit him for it. Part of the reason Quentin Post only wound up with 4 rebounds that game, Draymond Green, not shocker, and this guy named Jimmy Butler. When he joined the Warriors, we even noted that. We said one of the secret sauces of Jimmy Butler is he is a shooting guard that is listed as a power forward with the Miami Heat. And so it's like you have a power forward at your shooting guard position. So Quentin Post is very redundant at the moment on this squad, but that is not a problem. He's still doing what he needs to do. Upward swing, not expecting to do much. So I like it. I prefer a Quentin Post rookie, a player that's going to slowly ramp up and learn the skills, as opposed to a James Wiseman rookie
Yes.
or a Stephen Castle rookie, which is a rookie getting a lot of burn, and you're like, you were learning all the wrong things and getting
And
rewarded
I've
for it.
complained about this a million times on this show about James Wiseman, the way the Warriors handled him. They put him out there and gave him a ton of shots. The comparison I use is they played him like Hakeem Olajuwon. They said, okay, let's face up and see if you can drive to the basket. He was super young, right? He was like 19 years old. Now, how do they handle Quentin Post? First of all, he's one of those old rookies who played a million years during the pandemic, right? So he came in at 24, and they also did not play him at all in the first half of the season. And they probably didn't plan to play him at all, to be honest. But then they had all these injuries. So they're like, okay, well, he's playing well in Santa Cruz, right? The G League affiliate. And if he's dominating in Santa Cruz, let's get him some run up here. And he's done it. Like, they're just desperate for 3-point shooting, especially when they're playing Jimmy and Draymond together. So a guy like Quentin Post works very well with Jimmy and Draymond. And in fact, Draymond, he's kind of a protege of Draymond off the court as well as on the court, which is sort of funny. It's like, is Draymond the guy we want to be mentoring our young players? But so he's got some swag. But anyway, yeah, I could talk about all the Warriors rookies, but we should probably move on.
I love it. I don't have, I mean, of the other awards, this gets interesting. I don't really necessarily have an opinion on Coach of the Year, though that's hard for me to gauge. It looks like I'm gonna butcher the names, but like I'm just gonna say Mark, Coach Mark of the Oklahoma City
I think
Thunder.
it's
What?
Diagonal
Thank you. Awesome.
or
Won
Diagonal. I
won
think
it
Diagonal.
last
I don't know.
year. Um, Interesting. So I could see Udoka winning it on the Rockets. Fun. Love that.
Yeah, the bias against a young team for winning the finals, I think that bias might be reversed and help them for coach of the year because the coach might get more credit than he deserves. Not saying
Here's
he's
a
a bad coach.
here's a question. Has Malone, they should just give it to
Oh,
Malone.
yeah,
Give
there you
it to
go.
Malone, you people. Give him a makeup award.
Yep.
Give Malone a Coach of the Year award. He only has one All-Star. Give Jokic MVP and Malone Coach of the Year.
Of course, another one
That's
is Kenny Atkinson, right? He came over to the Cavs. This is his first year there.
Ooh, this is his first. Okay, it's
Yes.
got that's the answer. Done. I mean, I don't know who deserves it, but I mean that seems like a pretty obvious one, right? They go from a 48 win squad, fall in the second round in 5 games. They're the best team out east by not
Yep.
Yeah, it's going to be Kenny Atkinson. And it looks like in 2019 with Brooklyn, he came in fifth in voting before everything fell apart. And I'm curious what happened between those 2 years. Why did it fall apart year? Oh, you know what's funny? This is awesome. This makes a lot of sense. He got to coach Jared Allen
Yes.
in 28 when he was coaching Brooklyn when he got fifth in coach of the year voting. So that's fun. So there we go. And then he just got kind of like axed unceremoniously in the middle of the next season when they were a little below 500, which seems rough. I wouldn't be shocked if it was something else. So
He's probably getting some unfair credit for, we talked about this before. Darius Garland is healthy now, and the Cavs are just a lot healthier this year than normally. But I mean, he's a very, very well respected coach. I know that because he was an assistant on the Warriors the last few years. Everyone loves Kenny Atkinson. He is worthy, I would say, up with Malone and Diagonal.
I mean, I think we can I think we can call most of the awards, right? I think it's hard to call MVP. It could go either way. The reason I note that is while I think Jokic is currently the favorite, I saw this story before when Embiid took it. And it's basically like those two are close enough that a last second narrative could do this. So as a hypothetical, right? Let's throw my dream scenario, Brian, because I would love to see this. Let's say going into the last game of the season, the Oklahoma City Thunder have 69 wins. And let's say Shai Gilgeous-Alexander puts up 82 points to win their 70th game, right? If that happens, you got to give him the MVP, right? And that a similar thing, like Jokic and Embiid were really close with each other when Embiid won the award. And one of the funny things is Joel Embiid never plays in Denver. He always, people say he ducks it. I'm very conflicted here because I agree that it's an entertainment property, but I also agree that like athletes, Embiid included, want to protect themselves, protect their longevity and playing at altitude where he's probably going to lose. I give it to him. I also kind of have to like look the other way because Marcus Camby would like never play in Toronto. So, it's like I don't want to be throwing stones. But Joel Embiid didn't play in Denver, and I was like, it's over. It's over, right? It's over. The Nuggets win this. And then he put up 50 points against the Boston Celtics like with a week to go. And I was like, damn it, he's gonna win. And then he won. So I could see any form of narrative winning MVP, but I think some of the other awards, right? Like we know who's going to win Rookie of the Year knowingly. Stephen Castle, right? Just because points per game and no one's going to come close.
I'm not so sure on that one. We'll
I'd bet
see
money
though.
on it. The odds are really high on that at this
I
point.
would
It's kind
not
of
bet money on it.
you would not bet money. I mean,
No.
all right,
That's
interesting.
meaning I concede the argument to you.
I see what you're. Oh, I see. The flips. Oh, you're
I'm
right. I got
saying I disagree with you, but because you're willing to bet money, I'm going with you.
Yeah, I don't like it. I mean, like I'm like Zach Edey is our guy, but the mainstream voters are going to go for Castle. I think you're right. I think Coach of the Year is definitely going to be, you know, out Kenny Atkins or yeah, Kenny Atkinson. I almost said Altman, but that's Executive of the Year. Exec is fascinating. I almost want to give it to OKC, although Presti has won a few
Mm,
times, but at this
interesting.
point, Sam Presti kind of earns it. Sam Presti kind of earns it. I don't know.
I'll be honest. I almost never pay attention to that award. I don't know the trends, or is it just like whoever made the best trade this year usually gets it, or
It's not even consistent because I mean I remember I forget the year the GM of the I'm trying to think of which team, but like I've remembered a couple of years in past where someone wins and my argument annoyingly is I'm going, yeah, I agree, but it's not this year's award, if that makes any sense.
yeah.
I'm like they deserve that award for last year. They don't deserve it for this year.
Well, Brad
So
Stevens won it last year, and I would bet that. Well, they did win the title, but also his offseason, like bringing in that backcourt was ridiculous. So well deserved Brad Stevens for last year.
I'm curious about this for sixth man of the year, but the box score geeks, Brian, if you don't know it off the top of your head, I'll have a name for you in a second. You'll be like, oh, of course.
Six man is weird because it's like who's the best player where they randomly don't make him a starter. I would guess it's Dante DiVincenzo. There's also weird things with the number of games you play, right? If you make too many starts, you're not eligible for the award. But a lot of the players that win it do start a lot of games. It's a strange award.
But are you ready for it, Brian? This isn't even a
Let's hear it.
question. So I don't hate DiVincenzo.
Someone on the
That's like
Knicks, maybe.
that's a milk toast answer that in most years is correct, which is sad, right? When it's the funny thing is in past, when there is a player that is a six man that is too good, I'm looking at Lamar Odom and Manu Ginobili.
Right.
The voters are like, well, they're really a starter, and then they give it to someone who scores lots of points. But the answer by I think just about every conceivable metric, Brian, so I think he might actually win it for real. Peyton Pritchard, easy
Oh, of
answer.
course. Yeah, that's so true.
Zero games started out
Yeah.
again. This also speaks just to the depth of Boston.
I would bet
Peyton
he's a
Pritchard.
massive betting favorite as well.
Yeah, let's
I would
see.
bet he's a betting favorite. That's a little meta.
DraftKings.
No, but in wins produced, Peyton Pritchard is like he should have been just an all star, like off the bench.
Man of the year. I'm seeing if I can see this in. Yeah, I don't have like yeah, I can maybe check in a bit because I don't have a thing open. But
No,
yeah.
you're so right. Now that you say it, that one I'm more confident about than almost all of them.
Oh yeah, and this is a month old article I'm reading at Sports Illustrated, but they say Peyton Pritchard remains the odds-on favorite, and it's not even close. Like he's negative 150, and the next closest DeAndre Hunter at 280. So yeah,
Mm,
Peyton Pritchard. Right. This is nice, right? This is there are at least two awards, MVP and six man, where like we're not going to have any complaints with how they line up.
yep, that's right.
All right, Brian, I mean, I don't, the fun thing about how this season has shaped up is the middle of the West is so clumped right now, right? Right now, okay, so just the playoff spot, I do love this, Brian, and I do hope it doesn't move with apologies. Right now, the 3 versus 6 seed are the Nuggets versus the Warriors. The 4 versus 5 seed are the Lakers and the Grizzlies. I'm mostly okay with that. I think the NBA is probably not because the Grizzlies are probably going to win unless the Lakers can get healthy. A lot lies on if Luka Doncic can get healthy. He's been very inconsistent. Like he's had some really good games, but even his last game, he shot terribly. And you know, I will laugh if long term it turns out that Luka Doncic was Grant Hill-ish. But for what it's worth, Luka Doncic is currently at 151's win per 48. For those that don't know, about 100 is average because we're kind of looking at this almost like batting average. So 100 for an individual player. There are 5 players on an NBA squad, a starting squad. So you can almost look like win percentage. So 100 multiplied by 5, you would win 41 games. 200, if you had a starting squad of 200 players, you would win 82 games. So Luka Doncic right now is at 150 for the Lakers, but he started god awful. So he is on a nice uphill trend. But, I would still make the argument he is not like, if you look at him 2 years ago, his peak was 300. So he's been around 200 this year. We've seen him at 300. So if Luka Doncic can get back to that, that's something he's not there yet. Um, we have been saying LeBron James is due to, well, I have. You haven't, Brian. You've been right on the LeBron argument with me. For years, I've been saying LeBron James, one of these days, the wheels are just going to fall off. And you basically said he's going to steadily decline. And you're right. But what's stupid is like a steady decline is supposed to be like an airline descent into an airport. And LeBron James's steady decline is kind of like walking downhill in Wisconsin where we don't have mountains. So that's the question is how healthy is LeBron James going to be? I think Memphis, right, rookie of the that might be one advantage, right? Because they have Zach Edey, who we like, who came back and hasn't played the whole season. I could see the Lakers being more playoff ready in round one. So Lakers versus Memphis, if it holds that way, would be fine. But again, all of those seeds, the 2 through the 6 seed, very close. Anything could happen. And then when it comes down to the remainder, basically the Clippers are the only team with a yeah, Clippers and Timberwolves are the only team with like a winning record. So nice to see one of them. Rockets are in theory much better. So we don't even know. And then out east, it just gets even sillier where it's going to take a couple of rounds. And I can't believe this. The Pistons are back in the playoffs, man. That's
Yeah,
fun. Thompson twins.
they're
Thompson
so
twins.
good. Yeah, the Rockets and Pistons are funny, especially the Rockets. It's like their scoring is kind of falling apart, but they can still play defense. Like, are they going to win like some 90 to 85 games in the first round, or are they just, going to have those young player problems you're talking about? They have some older players, though. I don't know how healthy they are. Rockets are an interesting team. I think one big thing to look at with this is remaining strength of schedule. And the Lakers have a big problem with that. They have, according to Tankathon, the third most difficult remaining strength of schedule of any team. And it's worth noting Sacramento is fourth, Clippers are seventh, Memphis is ninth. So, yeah, it's going to be a little tougher for those teams, whereas Golden State is all the way down at 19. So,
So night
yeah.
are you talking is higher or worse? So 19th is an
Higher
easier.
means weak, lower means high. Um,
And
sorry,
so
higher
that
on the chart. So
so
Lakers are
that's
number 3. That means they have the third most difficult schedule.
and that's just Tankathon. I love
Yeah.
this. I have to take a look. So
Tankathon's a fun site.
and what am I looking? So if I go to Tankathon, I see NBA home. I've got the draft simulator
Yep.
and then
Yep.
oh,
Remaining
this is
strength of
awesome.
schedule. And it also has their toughest remaining opponents and toughest easiest opponents.
So this is fun because yeah, Boston has one of the easiest schedules going, which is nice. It'll be really hard for them to catch Cleveland, but good to that's actually kind of good in that they probably cannot catch Cleveland, but it means they'll be able to rest. To your point, rough news because Denver is 10th, as you said. The Lakers are, but that's also good for the Nuggets, right? Lakers are
Denver being
3.
10th is fairly low for a West playoff team, though, or fairly good for them, I should say.
Yeah, because let's see, in terms that, but here's what's rough, right? Cleveland Cavaliers at night. Sorry, you can't, too many names. This is awesome. Golden State at 19th bodes really, really well for them. And then you're right. Then it's basically Golden State is the only team,
Minnesota is down there as well for the
but I
West.
do not think so at this point, right? Let's see. Actually, this is rough, right? Because Denver is only, let's take a look, games back. Denver is, oh, you're right. That's rough. But Denver is 4.5 games in front of Minnesota. Because the good news is this is actually nice. Minnesota's at 70. Denver has 4 more wins, but we also have 5 fewer losses. So Denver's in good shape there. That's that. I mean, here's the reality. Like if Denver's got the 10th worth schedule and Minnesota is at 26, and here's the funny thing. They have to play the Nuggets. So they actually do have to play
Yep.
the Nuggets, the Grizzlies, that the thing is they just have some gimmies. The 76ers, the Brooklyn Nets, the New Orleans Pelicans, the Utah Jazz are probably gimmies. And we'll see. We didn't go in huge depth on the players that got shut down today, but I would not be shocked if, say, like Kevin Durant gets shut down for the Phoenix Suns in the near
Mm,
future.
that'd be interesting. Yeah, that'd be possible. Of course, the funny thing is he refused to be traded because he wanted to play in Phoenix this year. So maybe he'll stick to that.
Was that him or Beal? I know Beal didn't do it, but
They
did.
both did.
Hmm.
They both did. Beal is more that he wanted to not move his family was a big part of it. I'm sure it was true for both though. Here's another factor though. Just looking at this, Lakers and Sacramento, despite being third and fourth in difficulty, have 15 games, which is way more. Most of these other teams have 13, some only 12. So even though their schedule is really difficult, they have space to move. Because that a 3 game difference is like really big when it's only 15. That's a lot. Anyway.
So I'm excited to see how things will shake up as we finish. And by the way, yeah, I'm gonna use this as a faux shout out. So I have this on the script, Brian, but let's do it more of a shout out. So I'm gonna say Brian shout out. Check it out. Tankathon.com/ remaining schedule strength. A must for anybody interested in this fantastic site. My shout out, I'm going to talk a little bit of bowling, Brian, because the World Series of Bowling is going on right now in Vegas. Stupid Vegas, as we talked last show, the Dallas Mavericks are probably heading there. The World Series of Bowling for a couple of years was taking place in my backyard in Wisconsin, and that has not been the case for a couple of years now, which is a bummer because I was really enjoying going to this on the regular, but they moved it to Las Vegas, which, if I'm being candid, is a much better spot for it. One of the issues I was starting to have is like the World Series of Bowling as a professional sporting event. is was so rinky dink, right? And it's fun to consider bowling a mainstream sport, but if you compare bowling, any bowling alley you've ever been to, and you've maybe been to a league night, some of these tournaments that the best players in the world are competing over with, it's funny because it seems so small now with like $100,000 top prize or a $50,000 top prize look just like that. So bowling really has kind of fallen as a sport. And it's a bummer because there's a movie I really like called The League of Ordinary Gentlemen, which stars Pete Weber and Walter Wade Williams III as like their two main people. And that was in the early
That's
2000s. So
so
they were
funny.
like, man, how has bowling fallen in the 2000s? Jason Belmonte recently got an expose, a good way, right? By like Pablo Explains Everything, which was fantastic. He has really helped the sport, but even that's like not enough. So
He's
bowling,
got the he innovated the release point, right? Is one of the things he did.
he was the second player to use a two-handed release in contemporary times. And the benefit there is you increase the amount of like how fast the ball spins. The traditional bowler bowls one-handed with the thought being you hold the ball up high to get more speed and come through.
Just more torque, yeah.
Yeah. Whereas Jason Belmonte, his backstory is his parents owned a bowling alley, and when he was young, he couldn't lift a ball with one hand, so he used two. And then that actually gives you a lot more control and a lot more spin. So that's been helpful for the sport in terms of getting it. But even then, bowling as a mainstream sport is smaller. So going to Vegas over a week makes a lot more sense than Wisconsin if we're talking money, etc. And the fun news is at the World Series of Bowling, Brian, we had a fun thing going on until our buddy EJ Tackett had to go and ruin it, where World Series of Bowling has multiple events culminating with the World Championship. So they're Bowling's a funny sport to explain, Brian, but there are different oil patterns that make it harder to bowl. You go to normal house bowling, it's a very bowling pattern. Bowling is a weird sport because there is oil on the lanes, and professional bowlers have to be able to aim correctly, and it's invisible. That's one of my complaints with bowling, actually, is that the oil is really hard for standard people to understand the difficulty watching it. It'd be like watching people play golf, but if like the sand traps were invisible, if the water hazards were invisible, you'd be like, what's going on? I don't understand why that person just like got a bogey when it looked like their hit was good. But the World Series is going on. They have different things. In through the World Series of Bowling, which has four different events culminating, and then a fifth for the World Championship, we almost had a new winner in every one of the four events until EJ Tackett won his 26th event on the shark pattern recently. And then we are going into the World Championship, which is taking place this weekend. And the hope is that Jason Belmonte is going to be able to clinch his 16th all-time major. He has the highest all-time majors, but it's been a while since he's won one, Brian. He's the older player with the two-handed swing. EJ Tackett is like the young hotness who's just been doing amazing. He was the youngest player to 20 wins since Pete Weber, and then became the youngest player to 25 wins, winning a tournament named after Pete Weber. So lots of bowling stuff going on. One of the things, if we're staying in shout out land, Brian, I break cards over at Jeff Has Cool Cards on YouTube on Mondays. I will probably break some PBA Leaf cards
Nice.
on Monday. And by the way, Brian, the card I got, so Leaf is a card company,
Okay.
PBA is bowling. I broke some bowling cards. My favorite card that I have pulled from that set, a James Harden autograph. I have a numbered James Harden autograph from bowling because various sports people really like bowling. Chris Paul is one of them. So that's my one of the favorite cards in my collection is a James Harden autograph as a bowler.
That's cool. How about a Jeff Daniels maybe would be good, or it's a Big Lebowski reference. Sorry, these are the older bowling movies.
That I'm trying to think. No, that's hard. You could do what's not Jeff Daniels. Aren't you talking Bridges?
Oh, Jeff Bridges. I'm sorry. Oh my
I
God, I'm getting my
I
Jeffs mixed up.
I would not hate I
Jeff
if there
Daniels
was a
from Dumb and
reason.
Dumber, Dre.
What have you by the way, staying and just tangent and shout out. Have you seen the story about behind Speed for Jeff Daniels? So this is
Oh, did
really
he act in
famous.
that movie? I forgot.
He was the sacrificial lamb in Speed, and it's funny
Oh, that's
because
funny.
initially he didn't want to be in the movie for that reason. Because for those that haven't seen Speed, the movie Speed, I'm almost going to make a Simpsons reference, is this movie about this bus that can't slow down because there's a bomb strapped to it. And Jeff Daniels starts the movie as our bomb expert that gets killed by the scary bomb like villain. And then Keanu Reeves has to come in and save the day. But the key there, if you're doing good booking for a movie, is having Jeff Daniels as the character that dies lets us know the stakes. And there is a fun interview, I want to say like the Richardson show, or the Rich Eisen show, where he talks about how he basically just ripped off Jaws. So anyway, fun stuff, Brian. So
Wait,
yeah,
the
shout out.
movie Speed rips off Jaws?
Yeah, Jeff Daniels in the movie Speed
Mm.
rips off Roy Scheider and Jaws because he has to do a
Oh,
facial
that's
expression.
funny.
And basically that's what he's saying. They're saying, how did you do this facial expression in Speed? And he's like, I heard an interview about how he does the facial expression in Jaws, so we got to get a bigger boat. And he copied that. And it's like
That's funny.
beautiful.
Jaws is a great movie.
Jaws is a great movie. Dumb and Dumber is a great movie. Speed, an enjoyable movie. Can't hate it. But then again, so yeah, shout outs to EJ Tackett. Shout out to bowling. Here's hoping for Jason Belmonte. I'd really like to do it. I agree with you. A Jeff Bridges signed PBA Leaf bowling card would be fantastic. Tankathon, Brian, anything else from you before we head out?
Now that's it. Great show.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Well, Brian, I hope the 19th weakest strength of schedule Warriors do not overtake my Nuggets. But you know, if they want to climb, they want to get to that fourth seed or whatever, and we
Wait, I
play
kind of
some.
glossed over this. You said you wanted the smoke in the first round, the number 3 Nuggets versus the number 6 Warriors.
I'm always going to vote for that. I'm always going to vote for that matchup, right? How can I not? That's one of my favorite all-time playoff matchups. Despite the fact that I think the Nuggets have been on the losing end
My
recently.
boss wants Lakers versus Warriors at 4-5. It's an
That's
interesting one,
better.
but
That's better.
they could meet
That
maybe later. I don't know.
That's good booking though, because I mean, with that in mind, right? If one of the Lakers or Warriors is going home in the first round, you want them to play each other
Right,
for the ratings. So I agree
right.
with that actually. Lakers Warriors is what I want, and I do think the Warriors come out of that if that's the case, with how things currently sit. All right, Brian. All right, everybody. Thank you for heading to the Box Score Geeks show. We go live usually Tuesdays, Wednesdays at Brian's, and morning if the Nuggets give his team a tough loss. Every other week, twitch.tv/nerd numbers. You can find myself and Brian on Blue Sky. B Foster for Brian, Nerd Numbers for myself. Find the show every place podcasts are found, the Box Score Geek Show, and check out Channel Nerd Numbers on YouTube, where I leave the unedited version up, Brian, and those have actually been getting some interaction. And then I do edit this a little before it goes out, you know, cut out some curse bombs and stuff before it goes onto iTunes, Stitcher, etc. We'll see you in 2 weeks, everybody. And here's hoping Nikola Jokic holds on to his MVP spot.